All right, guys. So we are here. We are here. We are here. We are here. Welcome. Good evening, everyone from Aurora Black community and beyond who might have an opportunity to watch this conversation that we're having with NDP Kelly Yvonne today. So welcome. We believe that is important for people to know who our candidates are, where their heart is, um, and how we can get in touch with them and know more about what they stand for. So it's a conversation that needs to be healthy and clean. If you have comments, we would love you to post them. If you have questions, we welcome them. And then we might not have enough time, but I'm sure that Kelly will be pleased to respond to those later on. Shruti, can you do the land acknowledgement, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Fiona. Aurora Black community is humbled to have launched on the traditional territory of various First Nations and Métis communities, including Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Mississauga Wendake Neon Menciu. Aurora Black community as an organization acknowledges that there exists a long history of First Nations and Métis people in Ontario that commands immense respect. For more information, visit nativeland.ca. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Shruti. So I'm playing around with this. I was supposed to make you big on the screen. I don't know, but we're all here.
All good.
We're all here. So we have NDP Yvonne Kelly. I don't know whose phone I'm hearing. Hold on. So we have NDP Yvonne Kelly, and tonight we, as a community, believe it's so important to know our candidates, Miss Kelly. It's not about whether I believe in a certain political party or not. It's knowing their heart and making an informed decision, and also making sure that we do our due diligence and make it a responsibility to vote. Your vote matters. So welcome. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank
And
you so much. I'm just so honored to be the first candidate that you're talking with. As I said, my name's Yvonne Kelly. This is actually the third time I'm running for the NDP in Newmarket, Aurora, and I have ran a provincial campaign for a good friend. And a lot of that came out of just our work that we did in the community around anti-poverty work and housing. And a number of us thought, you know, maybe the way to make a difference is to run for political office. So I'm also a mom. And a wife. I have 5 children and 2 grandchildren with 1 on the way. So I couldn't be more thrilled about that. And I work for the York Region District School Board with the Inclusive School and Community Services Unit. And I'm also the co-chair or the chair of the Social Planning Council of York Region right now. So a lot of the work that I'm really interested in talking with you, regardless of win or lose, is work that's ongoing in our community to support the Black community and the Indigenous community. So I really look forward to making this relationship with you guys.
amazing. So thank you so much for that. That is so necessary. It's about relationships. So that was a key word that we're so grateful for. And don't mind me as I keep playing around with this thing. We have Shaheen that's asking some questions. So we'll go on and we'll put these questions in. So those are questions that will be popping up so we can see them and having a dialogue with the community. So Shruti, do you want to shoot off your first question to NDP Yvonne Kelly?
So I have this, I read this very beautiful thing in your manifesto wherein you have a deal to kind of build better new communities. So I wanted to know if you have any thoughts on that with regards to how you and Aurora Black community, together, how can we, bring this change and bring this better community?
Okay, great. So just to clarify, I saw a question about childcare. So I was looking at that. That's not the question, right? The first question is about investing in communities.
That's right.
That's right.
Great. So I'm a community partnership developer, but my background is social work, and I've been a community worker and a community organizer, an activist for 30 plus years. Community is the most important thing to me. What I've also seen in the last 30 years is a de-investment in communities, and certainly not enough investment in communities of color, communities that have experienced barriers for economic opportunities, educational opportunities. So I'm constantly advocating for those types of investments, whether it's for food and housing. We saw all these needs during COVID. We saw the not-for-profit sector step up But what we want more than charity is we really want to build opportunities in communities. One of the things that I've been most excited about this last couple of years is through the Social Planning Council of York Region. And I'll share the URL later because people might want to know a little bit more about that.
Yes.
We have a partnership with the York Region Alliance for African Canadian Communities, looking at community benefits and how community benefits can come as a result of huge amounts of money being spent anywhere in your community. So that jobs and training can go to the people in those communities, and also how social procurement of small businesses, so that lots of money gets spent every day by municipalities, by universities, by hospitals, and a lot of it is outsourced. When we have people in our communities who are great chefs and great service people and can do all those jobs, and it can keep the money in our own economy and our own communities. So I feel like communities have taken care of us throughout this time, but it's come at a cost. And so governments need to understand, even though most of them don't come from community, the importance of investing that money back, so that youth have opportunities and people just have places to be and services and public programs that they can rely on. So that's really close to my heart.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll just put up a question we have from the community. It says, what is your stance on childcare? Is you will subsidize nationally? How would you pay for the program? I know this is a big question. Do you want to hit at it, or you want to follow up?
Oh, absolutely. I want to take this one head on. So I moved to Ontario from Saskatchewan in the 80s, and went to Ryerson to be a social work student. And I also did a brief placement with Bob Ray. And so this was the early 80s. And all the people I kept running into were like fighting for universal childcare and low, appropriate and affordable childcare, quality childcare. And what is it now? 48 years maybe later, we're still asking for the same thing. And I feel like it's been punted down the field too many times. So the NDP has been looking at how we can implement a universal childcare system for a long, long time. It costs money, but it also brings more money back into the economy because families can work, families can pay taxes. So it kind of pays for itself. So the initial investment is not insignificant, but we also have Quebec to I guess to the west and the north of us, or east and the north of us, that have had a universal childcare system in their province for years. Initially at $8 a day, so subsidized heavily, so people could afford it. Because right now we know childcare is like having a second mortgage for anyone who's working.
Yes.
For moms who are on their own, especially, I find like it keeps you from doing the things that you want to do and taking care of your family. So we will pay for that, but it will eventually pay for itself, and it would be a $10 a day national childcare program. It'll just, 100,000 women were kicked out of the workforce during COVID. And some of them have lost their jobs for good. And if we're going to have a she recovery, if we're going to really invest in women and children, we have to provide quality universal childcare. We're really behind on the world stage for not having that system already in place.
Amazing. So there you have it. In the community, that's their answer. If you have any other follow-up question, then you can hit her with it. My question for you, Ms. Kelly, is this. I know that the COVID questions, COVID has really distracted a lot of the other work that really need to be done in our country. And I know it's a serious issue, but I feel that it has taken away attention from other things that are necessary, mental health. And so my question is, how are you holding yourself accountable to community where there's things right now that still need attention, like multiculturalism, diversity, equity, and inclusion? How are you in this stressful, because I wouldn't even want to be in a place that you guys are in right now. How are you holding yourself accountable to make sure that you're looking at a holistic approach for the country and that we're not just looking at COVID matter at this time?
Well, absolutely. And I think that, I just want to say I might be biased, but I think the NDP has the most holistic plan. And I think that's why sometimes we get accused of being too ambitious. But the thing is, you can't just focus on one thing. Those kind of decisions are short-sighted, and they keep us in a place, and we don't grow, and we don't get to where we need to get to. My concern, I'll say, for COVID is that governments may decide to take an approach of austerity and not spend any money or invest in people and in infrastructure for good jobs, because they're going to say to you, the debt, the deficit, the debt, the deficit. The problem is we usually get into high deficits when we don't invest in people. And so that's what we need to do. And I know in my own work, which I had to take a little bit of a break from for the campaign, but also my extracurricular focus, which is social planning, community development, all the work that we've been doing around social procurement, gender, environmental, and racial justice. Those things have continued because we've said, even throughout COVID, we've seen, and we knew, you know more for your community, and those that are dealing with the environment knew all along what this was going to mean. But I think other people are waking up to the fact that mental health is a huge issue. Certain communities have been hit harder. Your community for sure, with issues, with health issues, and have not been able to avail yourselves of the supports that you need. So we can never turn our back on those things, because those are the reasons that COVID just exacerbated the gaps that were already there. So we have to stay committed. So you have my commitment to stay accountable to this, because win or lose, this is the work that's high on the agenda of the Social Planning Council, of the Social Planning Network of Ontario, which I'm part of, which is 16 organizations across the province that are working for better jobs, better environmental protections, all those things that working families need, because working families cannot be bearing the brunt of the costs of COVID. We have corporations in this country that have never paid their taxes. Large, very, very wealthy Canadians who use loopholes and tax havens to not pay their taxes. And it amazes me that that's never the first thing that other governments are saying. Like, that's a lot of money. If you or I owed a little bit of money, or if we hadn't paid our taxes, we'd be sure to get a call, and we'd probably owe even more money next year. That's not happening for a lot of Canadians. And so when it comes to the deficit, to the debt, to the way we're going to pay for these programs, is we're going to shift our focus, and we're going to look at where a lot of that money is. And my leader, Jagmeet Singh, is not afraid. He's not cozy friends with those folks. So he wants to make sure they'll pay their fair share, so that money that needs to be spent. We can't stop spending money. We can't stop spending money on healthcare and investing in communities. That still needs to happen, and it can. So that's what I would say. And hold us accountable. Hold every last one of us accountable. If we make promises, you need to hold us accountable. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. Again, if you're just watching us, we're just having, the Aurora Black community is just having a conversation with our candidates that are running in the 2021 election. It is our responsibility to be informed so we can to ask questions, tough or not. I think everything is about respect. With dignity, leave the candidates with their dignity, but ask questions that matter to you, your community, your family, and the causes that you stand for. And like you said, we don't expect you guys to be perfect. We just want you guys to be honest, because I always say, Miss Kelly, that sometimes I feel like the politicians are like the bad relationship. They chase after you when you are, when you're your marriage, guys or women, whatever, you chase after each other. And then when you get to know each other, they forget about how to date and the little cute things that you need. We don't want to be picked up and dropped. So my final question for you is, right now, a lot of things we look at a lot of things where it talks about racism, inclusion and diversity and all that. How are you as a leader going to make sure that those are not just fancy words that have been spreading around? How are you going to ensure that tokenism and performative behavior is, we're intentional, and that we're not just doing something or just putting the word in our vocabulary to say it, but we really have a heart? What do you want to share with us on that, if anything? You're muted.
Sorry, my son just walked in the door, so I was trying to tell him to be quiet, so he didn't hear him on the recording. So that's an excellent question, because as a voter myself, I will tell you that nothing bothers me more than just performative, and then serious issues that people vote on, and then those things don't come to fruition. So in the area of racism, anti-racism, diversity, inclusion, I think our party has said for many, many years, we have to go beyond just the talk about multiculturalism, just the talk about diversity and inclusion. Very important things, but really what we really have to hit, where the rubber hits the road, is where our systems are discriminatory, are racist, are anti-Black racist, are Islamophobic. We have systems that were built on a colonial foundation, and they do not respect diversity and inclusion, and therefore set up systems that disenfranchise, that keep people out, that exclude. And so that's why you see, and we see, historic lows of folks, of racialized folks in low-paid jobs. I can't tell you how many women I spoke to throughout COVID who were parents of the children in our school board, who were working in long-term care, the most seriously dangerous place that someone could work during COVID, without equipment, without anything, being underpaid. And that is, to me, an absolute assault. And so we can't just talk about these things. There's actual policies that go along with making a difference. It's looking at criminal justice. We've been saying for years, we need to collect race-based data. How do you show what's happening? How do you show that what people are talking about is actually, for those that don't believe it, or haven't experienced it themselves, that we can actually prove, and we can do that. And it took years, for example, for our school board to get on with the fact that they needed to collect demographic data, so we can see how policies and programs are affecting racialized students with special needs, people that are low income. That's very critical. So I think what you want to be asking and looking for is, what are your commitments? Like, how deep are you willing to go, right? And if it stays at the level of kind of talking about diversity, you know what? We've got lots to celebrate, but we also have hard things to do. And the hard things to do are going to be the things that actually make a difference in people's lives, right? So you can't have a racially sensitive program if you're not going to do anything about the cost of housing, if you're not going to do anything about the fact that people can't afford medications, even though they can go to the doctor, and then they can't afford the very things that are going to keep them healthy. So all those things matter to communities. And so that's what I would say is, look at the actual policies, look at the past policies and practices, because that will tell you a lot about where people are at. I think everybody needs to be given a chance, but when you ask the hard questions, you'll either get the answers or you won't. And so that's why I so appreciate what you guys are doing for your community, by introducing you to all of us, getting to know us. And, I would say that the thing that's most important in my life, aside from my family, of course, is the great work that I've been able to do in the region of York. So not just the riding, but across the region. And that's the work that really fills me up. And I feel like when we're doing that work, that's how we're held accountable, because you can't get away from community. You can't go to an office somewhere in Ottawa. You're in the community. People are telling you when you get it wrong, right? So that's being held accountable. And that's what I think is important.
Well, that's amazing. Shruti, do you have any final question for our NDP candidate?
Well, I was going to ask, what did courage to do something right meant, but with whatever you said, that taking racism, colonialism, discrimination head on, I really appreciate that answer. But any final thoughts on that, we would love to hear.
Well, I will say that, federally, provincially, regionally, municipally, we have a lot of work to do in the region. And I know that because early on, shortly after the murder of George Floyd, we worked together with the York Regional Labour Network to send out a survey of all municipal politicians and mayors, and to ask them what their municipalities were doing beyond a declaration, beyond a key to the city, beyond, like you're talking about, a performative kind of statement. What were they doing to enact real change and to really address the issue of anti-Black racism in their communities? And we got very few responses back. Like, we got 4 or 5. And we followed up with those that did, and had interviews. And we worked with the Urban Alliance for Race Relations, my friend Nathan Shan, to do that work. And so I think what they came away with, at least, was, we weren't happy with the pat answers. We were saying, we want to know what you're actually doing. And, excuse us if we're going to call you out on some things, because maybe you don't know that that's performative and that it needs to be deeper. So I'd say that's the kind of stuff at the very lowest, not the lowest level, but at the local level, that we need to do. And as we do all this work, it all goes forward to inform even our provincial, because there's a lot of connections between all these politicians, local, regional. And so when they start to see you on the move and that you're taking things in hand, and I think in York Region, with all the stuff around the renaming of Vaughan Secondary to Hodin Alaya, the Black community has done an incredible service to the rest of students and families in the York Region District School Board, because you put them on notice and said, we're not going to take this anymore. And so it's opening the door for other communities to become more vocal. And York Region has never been a place where people have been that vocal. They kind of put up and they don't really complain. And that's, it's not complaining to say we're being treated poorly. It's actually what we need to do. So I will be here to do that work, regardless of whether I get elected as your MP or not. But I'm so excited to reach out and to really be connected with you now, even for all the work that I have to do through the school board in the next year. So great to meet you both.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I love everything that you said, because I've always say, I made a version of my own quote from something else that was made and said, and I think Councillor Gallo read it last night. Our deepest fear is not that we won't be invited, is that we will be invited and be silenced. And I am grateful that you're saying to us that you're someone who is not worried about being called out and called on and kept accountable, because I know in times when I've attempted to do that, you have leaders who take offense on that and rather to shut you down. And it makes you not, because these topics are not going to be comfortable. But it tells you, if you're getting uncomfortable, it tells you something needs to be fixed. Right. So we love and appreciate you. I'm glad to have met you. I don't know you, but I am glad to meet you now and looking forward to what we can do as a community. So we have some feedback that's coming up. It says, trust me, Yvonne does the work. So that's someone's, next person says, I've seen it myself. And great aligned the marginal community I work in. So thank you, viewers.
So nice.
You will have this. Feel free to share it. I know we say we're going to do 10 minutes, but 15 minutes the most. So we'll be ending this live.
Okay.
Put you on main screen alone for you to close out with anything that you have to say to the community.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks again for the opportunity to speak to everyone tonight. I really just want to encourage people, in spite of all of the reservations and all of the times when people think that voting doesn't really make a difference. And I completely understand why some people might feel that way. It is really important to exercise your vote and to speak and vote your heart and your conscience, because it also means that even if the party that you choose or the decisions that the party that you vote for doesn't win, we're building a movement. We're all building towards something better. And the NDP in Newmarket Aurora have been really building over the last 10 years. And I think the reason that we're able to do that is because we do the work between elections. We're not just here as a partisan group trying to win you over to our side. We really see the work that needs to be done around housing, around childcare, around race relations. These are things that don't go away between campaigns. So join us if you're interested. I can provide my information if you want to get involved. Now, there's only a week left, but there's also a long time before the next election, although the provincial is coming up and we'll be actively working for that as well. Anyway, I don't want to take any more of your time this evening, but thank you so much for your interest. And I look forward to connecting with all of you sometime in the near future.
Well, beautiful. Thank you so much again. Have yourself an amazing evening. Any comments you guys have, we will post our details below so you know how to get in touch with us.
That's awesome.
Thank you for joining. Thank you again. And we wish you all the blessings and all the luck as you head off to this race.
Thank you so much, both of you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a great one. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.